it's a studio that consists of two people, me and my brother Ernest. It's the first game that this studio made, but we both have, I'd say, roughly 10-year experience in game industry, but in other places. I've mostly worked with web premium games and mobile games in the past, and Ernest mostly worked on artistic games and also published a small Steam game of his own. And at the start of the last year, I had just quit my job in an education technology startup and decided that okay, while I'm looking for my new job, let's do some co-project, let's prototype, let's have some fun. And yeah, we started, and then at a certain point we decided this looks kind of interesting, let's try making something out of it. We had a sort of early brainstorm, like what kind of prototype we'd want to make. We were discussing various unsolved problems in game design, and one of these was this feeling that there are few detective games which deliver actual detective this experience, and why there are not more. So we made a prototype for that. It wasn't very good, but we tried something more and more. And the moment we started realizing, okay, this seems pretty fun for other people, then we decided, okay, let's try to make Golden Idol. I would describe it as a point-and-click deduction game. I like phrase deduction because it's a type of game where you have to observe the environment, kind of understand what's going on, and somehow communicate it to the game. And if you're right, then you win. The game accepts your insight. So yes, it's a deduction game about cursed artifact and aristocratic family in the 18th century. We were definitely influenced by Return of the Obra Dinn, which has this frozen in time vignettes. But I think like at a certain point it was not, I'd say, artistic limitation. It's easy to make something if it's very static, create various art. But additionally, because if things move in time, it gets very complicated. Like, yeah, you wanna look into someone's inventory, but that person has gone away somewhere. So what do? Do you like rewind it, or do you follow them? Do you wait? We wanted the game to be very kind of fast, like not wasting time of players. Like if they want to quickly click through everything, they can do it. The original plan for the game was to have it like in different eras. Some kind of earlier era, then maybe something in the 80s, and then maybe in some deep past. But we wanted that the first like kind of chapter has to be in something classical, but not super classical. Like 19th century, we feel is like where all the detective stories are, like all the Sherlock Holmes stories and things. We wanted something else, so we took this 18th century and this aristocratic setting. It felt that it would appeal to the audience, like families, mysteries, old castles. It all seems to work together nicely. The way we built the prototype was as follows. I made a small kind of mystery story in modern times about a student, which I drew in paint, and then I just showed it to my brother. He clicked around, and I said him, "Can you tell me what has happened here? Like just in free text." And he told me some ideas, and we checked whether it was interesting to think even about it in this format. But then we realized, okay, but I mean, we are not that good programmers to ask someone to tell in free speech. So how does the player communicate that they have understood things? And I've always thought about this it as being kind of spectrum. That you have like on one side like very like maximum freedom, free speech, which is very difficult to comprehend for machines. And on the other spectrum, you have some kind of very limited, like I don't know, free choices from quiz, like which is super easy to program, but it's very restrictive when you kind of tell already the solution for the player. They don't have to figure it out on their own. And then we started with you construct your own sentences system, but it was way too overwhelming, and the players could construct right sentences which we had not thought of, and it was not a good idea because they didn't even know what we exactly wanted from them. And then we simplified it to, okay, like they're gonna put these phrases in these empty slots and let's see if it's fine, because it's kind of very arbitrary. But it turned out that it worked well. I'm very happy to hear it, but I also think that when you start, like the first level is super easy, the second one kind of relatively easy, you can get slightly stuck, and then the third one I think is kind of jump in difficulty. There's much more happening, and people may at first be intimidated, like, oh, now like 8 people to identify, like that's crazy. But I think once they start doing it, once you kind of slowly start gathering the things, you realize, okay, yeah, this can be done. Like you find out one thing, second thing, and I think at the end of the game, people had gotten quite good at it. That's why it turned out to be shorter than we expected, because the players were better at it than we planned. It is kind of a challenge that I feel we had to encounter again and again. People really like identifying these characters, but if we want to have recurring characters, then there is no puzzle. But if you change the characters all the time, then the story is kind of not building itself. So yeah, in the end, if you remember, like we skipped all these character identifying puzzles. There are different ones. I think ideally we wanted kind of to balance reoccurring characters with new ones, because if you have the reoccurring ones, I think people feel more attachment to the scenario. At the same time, you need new ones for the mystery. But David Goran, it's like slight spoilers, but not exactly. Everyone is always super suspicious of him, like because he has such an, I don't know, bandit-like face that everyone always assumes worst of him in every scenario. It's mainly because I think it's the fantasy of the detective that you solve. So you solve the murder, like the classical whodunit. Someone's been killed, so there's someone whom to blame for. You can observe motifs. I guess it's kind of a cliche. At the same time, it gives this somewhat a bit heavy, kind of maybe grotesque mood. It's always about death, and the deaths can be a bit scary or weird. Yeah, I feel if we had a scenario about someone stealing something, it wouldn't have the same kind of weight with it. So the game has these 12 scenarios, and except for the short ones, we roughly spent a month building one scenario, and we really hoped that we would build some kind of good framework how to do it, and we didn't. Like every time we did somehow differently, and we didn't have like good method how to go about it, and figuring out what is in the scroll text was kind of a huge challenge, because yeah, you don't want to be too obscure, because then people can get overwhelmed, but you don't want to tell too much. But at the same time, you need kind of alternative options, what could have happened here. Yeah, so this is why like stealing or some kind of other details would appear in the scroll text, because we didn't want them just to be like who killed who because something. We wanted it to be kind of like a story. Primarily, we wanted to use some kind of variation of pixel art, because it's a bit of callback to old point-and-click adventure games, and I do like that style. But Ernest, like, he made a bit of a twist on it with this dithering style. So it was one reason. Secondly, it is I think one of the challenges with anything realistic is that it high graphical fidelity makes it much more difficult to communicate to the players what is important and what is not. Like maybe if you played like some kind of I don't know, VR escape room or something like that, you know that some objects are active but some are not, some are just like for visuals, but you don't know which are which. It's kind of confusing. And here it would mean that we'd have to fill in so many details, it would be difficult to understand which of this information is just background and which is important. So simpler graphics kind of help. And thirdly, the characters and the visuals, they are a bit grotesque. It's because my brother he's a painter and he loves I think they're also 18th century artists Doré and Hogarth, and they kind of reminded he's influenced by their style, and that's why they look like this. I would say generally the approach to music was also very old point-and-click adventure game influenced, where if you change the scene, often the music would change, matching the mood. So we'd have discussions with our composer from Ukraine, Kyle Misko, where I would kind of briefly describe him in this scenario. Like a Little Mermaid, I think is a great example. Like in the top floor, it's kind of lonely, a bit scary, and there's the dead body. So we need something like gloomy there, and something which doesn't feel like too new agey. It has to feel old-timey. The instrumentation should be leaning towards this 18th century feel, but at the same time, it's a video game, and I mean we can't afford an orchestra, so it's fine that it's kind of simple. While downstairs there's this happy, jolly music with drinkers of wine. So yeah, I guess setting the mood as for all games was a task, and trying not to be too repetitive, because it's quite a challenge. People may sit for an hour solving a scenario, and one track will go round and round. But yeah, we were not ready to make too much music for the game. Hint system was the very last. I don't know. It's kind of the last feature. We could have shipped without it, but I strongly believe that original point-and-click adventure games had very, I'd say, problematic gameplay flow, where you would play, and then you would get stuck, and the puzzle might be like so crazy you can't figure it out, and you start trying everything on everything, like dragging all your items on every object, and you get very frustrated. And in the end, you may just I'll go to walkthrough and see what's there. But I think if you open the walkthrough, you kind of lost engagement with the game. Like you don't trust it anymore to make sense, and then quite likely you will finish the game with a walkthrough, which I think is not intended experience. Ideally, we really didn't want players to go away from the game and start using walkthrough. We wanted them to kind of believe that they can figure it out on their own. So we built this hint system, which has this barrier, so you're not tempted just to quickly like look at all the clues, and the clues are they are a bit vague, but we hope that they are kind of good enough for someone to start figuring out things, which was a hit and miss. We're still in this after launch recovering, calming down period, where we are still figuring out what we want to do. Yeah, at this point I can't promise anything concrete. I can say that we have other ideas or topics that we want to explore in game design. At the same time, building this game, launching it, seeing the feedback also has shown us more interesting things or challenges to address in the deduction genre, because I guess now we have more experience in that, and we're best suited to build something even better.